welcome members and guests to the League of Women Voters of the San Juans November membership meeting. I'm Nisha Quas, the Vice President of the League, and we have a great program today on tourism in the San Juan Islands. Barbara Merrick from the San Juan Islands Visitor Bureau and Joe Simons, author of Potholes in Paradise. I'd like to thank Steve Bowman and Cheetah Miller for their hard work on the program, and certainly thank our speakers, Barbara and Joe, for making time out of their busy schedules to talk to us today. For those of you who are not members, the League's mission is empowering voters defending democracy. We present timely programs and candidate forums to promote informed and active participation for local citizens in government. As an organization, the League is nonpartisan and does not support or oppose candidates for public office. We do, however, advocate for voters' rights and voter participation, and the League also sometimes takes positions when on issues when there's a consensus among the membership. So please consider joining us, and there are membership applications on the table by the door. Looking ahead, next month, our annual holiday luncheon is Wednesday, December 11th at the Grange from 11:30 to 2. The price is $30 and Deb Nolan is catering. There's a vegetarian option and space is limited. You can make your reservations with me by email or phone, or today. You can tell me that you're coming and I'll put your name down. Our speaker at the luncheon will be Representative Deborah Lekanoff, our 4th District State Representative, and we'll be holding a fundraising silent auction of holiday goodies with all proceeds to fund our programs. And if you're a member and willing to make some baked goods for the silent auction, please let Audra know. Now Steve Bowman will introduce our speakers.
Thanks, Nisha.
Yep.
Well, great. Thank you all for coming. We're fortunate to have two individuals to talk on sharing paradise, the balance of tourism and preservation in the San Juans. And I will introduce Joe, who will be first up. And Joe Simons is a longtime resident of the San Juans. Joe has been an active community leader and activist working with nonprofit service organizations and in local island affairs. His book, Potholes in Paradise, is a popular commentary on issues facing our islands and in other similar resort communities. He has worked tirelessly to preserve our natural world in San Juan County. Please welcome Joe Simons.
Does it work? Excellent. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak before you. By the way, can everyone hear clearly? If you can't, please raise your hand and I'll see if I can talk even louder. But at least we want to make sure the logistics that everybody can hear and see work well. I've been here for almost 50 years. One of the things that drew me, and I suspect drew most of you, was the natural beauty of the place, the small human scale, the community participation. I've found myself called to participate in a lot of things. I think because I care about this place so much, it resonates, the whole county, not just my little end of Orcas Island, resonates with me to my inner core. It's a very peaceful, tranquil place that I'm blessed to feel that I'm able to be at, because if I were trying to come here today or even 10 years ago, that would be impossible. Mother Nature is my mentor. I feel a calling, which I'm going to be sharing some of that with you today, to unpack, reveal, disclose, and illuminate. Whoops, don't want you to see that quite yet. What I see are some of the really big issues here. Some of you may know that I was chosen to be the chair of the Orcas Committee to rewrite the comprehensive plan back in the early 90s. On day one, I realized that the process by which the plan was going to be constructed under the newly passed Growth Management Act of the state of Washington was seriously, egregiously faulty. But nevertheless, I proceeded with trying to do my best to guide the planning process as we citizens were asked to do. But I was also, at the time that the plan, the ink finally dried on the on the plan, I was one of 5 citizens, 4 from Orcas, interestingly enough, who challenged the plan as being egregious violation of the Growth Management Act. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but the burden of proof is very high. There's lots of reasons why it was very likely that we would not prevail, but in fact we prevailed over and over and over again. The Western Board, the Superior Court, and even the Court of Appeals all agreed with the fundamental positions that we had. The result of all that is a mess, and we're now updating the mess. We're going through the comprehensive plan update process. I'm not going to go into any of that, but you'll see what my focus is on wanting to have you involved in this. My motivation for being here and for doing the work I do is because I love this place. I feel like the parent of a child that is being bullied or being harassed or being ignored or being actually harmed. And I just can't sit still and let that happen without some sort of protest. And the narrative arc of this presentation is going to be to inform, to inspire, and to involve you. This presentation isn't about me. It's not really so much about San Juan County. It's about you. So here are the goals. I want to illuminate the conversation. I want to reframe the story. And I want to mobilize you or inspire you to act in accordance with your heart. The method I'm going to use is to introduce a mythological perspective, because really what's going on at the deepest level here is a mythology problem. And the one that I'm using, which I think we can all relate to, is the hero's journey. You are the hero. The hero, however, has a challenge. Not only is the adventure serious, because we're talking about the future of San Juan County and your experience about living here. And since many of the people in this room have the same color hair that I do, the real concern isn't necessarily what's happening for us, because we're going to be dead in the next 10, 20 years, but the people who are following us, the people that we are in effect creating a legacy for, we're this, in a sense, the ancestors for, even if we don't know these people. They don't have to be our own children or grandchildren. They don't even have to be our neighbors. They are a concept. So if the adventure is serious, one of the critical tasks on the hero's journey is to decide whether you're going to accept or refuse the call. Because once you've started an adventure, then they might say, I'm not so sure I want to do this. I'm going to use Parzival. He's our guide. Unknown to him, his principal task was to break the spell that had entranced the Grail King, the symbolic leader of the Grail Kingdom. Because the king is wounded, the Grail King, the kingdom is barren. The king and kingdom are under a spell. Symbolically, San Juan County, the group of islands, and the residents, people in this room and everyone else, are under a spell. The kingdom, our psyches, are entranced. The trance must be broken, and you are the spell breaker. There's no one else. Me? Me? Yes, the Arthurian tales are not about long ago and far away. They are symbolic of the issues we face today. Parzival symbolizes the conflict between how we are taught to behave versus our true compassionate nature. He fails to break the spell haunting the Grail Castle because he was taught to conform to social rules and disregard the impulse of his heart. He could not speak his truth. Yes, you are the hero. The issue before us is not between those who support or make their livelihood from tourism versus those who are feeling that their world is being invaded. Rather, the conflict is between our ears. Each of us needs to survive, yet most, perhaps all of us, came here for non-economic reasons. We have to acknowledge that our internal kingdom is confused. Material wealth competes with emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Yes, you. Each of us has a me and a we. The me part is self and family oriented. The we part recognizes our relationship to the group. The me part keeps the lights on. The we part uses the roads, schools, ferries, trails, power, EMS, police, and aquifers, and plenty of other things. Everyone has and needs both parts. Generally, if one side goes up, the other side goes down. Rarely can anyone have more me as well as more we. Life constantly forces us to balance these motivations. So let's talk about San Juan County today. Where is the kingdom? Where has it been? Where is it going? Here's some trend lines. The population is 4 times larger now than it was in 1970. I moved here in the early 70s and first came to the island in 1968, so I've actually experienced that shift. The vision statement, which was originally created by the Comprehensive Plan Committees in 1993, really, and then approved by what was then called the BOCC, the Board of County Commissioners, now it's the County Council, was approved in 94, and again, it was revamped during this comp plan update process in 2018. It's basically being ignored. It's pretty, it's beautiful, we're going to get into a little bit of it, but you have to realize that it is right now, and one of the reasons that I think the poster said something about advertising me as wanting to actualize and operationalize the vision statement is because that really, I think, is something that we've all approved of, and I think it speaks to everybody's heart, but it hasn't been turned into reality. The county, as a consequence, the comp plan is essentially irrelevant. What drives the future of San Juan County is the market, it's not the plan. The plan may sound good, but if it doesn't have any solidity behind it, and part of that solidity is you as voters, it's not going to go anywhere. I call it a toothless tiger, which I already described. The vision statement is described on page 1 of the introduction of the comp plan as the foundation for the whole plan. And if you have, I don't know how many people have ever know what a comprehensive plan is, have read one, have read the San Juan County one, which is printed out that thick, but I can almost guarantee you wouldn't understand it. And I don't mean that because you're stupid. I think it's because it's very complicated and it doesn't really say what it means. So if you read page 1, which says the vision statement was the foundation of the entire plan, the plan is built to fulfill the vision statement, and then you looked at page 2, which has the vision statement, if that's all you read, you'd say, hey, I'm home free, everything is great, who's going to read all the rest of this? But you would not be reading really the on-the-ground truth. So in San Juan County today, there are no restrictions on the number of vacation rental permits issued to anyone for any location, on any island. There are also no restrictions on the issuance of building permits under the same rules, just none. If anybody wanted to go into the San Juan County Building Department of Community Development and hand in 300 building permits, they're not going to say no. They're just going to say it'll take us a while to process them, but there's no limitations. Since 2001, although it has been formally requested, naturally by me, San Juan County has declined 3 times to generate information on the build-out numbers and impact of the build-out. I'm not going to really go into build-out, but as that's going to be coming up at another thing, but I can assure you it's much, much higher than the current population. The build-out means that the total population of all parcels were subdivided to their maximum, and a structure was built on it, and there were 2 people, which is on the average, 2 people per house. This is just a quick look at the issuance of vacation rental permits since 2010, which is pretty much when Airbnb kind of started hitting the streets. And these show the number of vacation rental permits issued each year. The number of permits issued in 2017 is 3 times the number that were issued in 2010. And since the comp plans planning period is 20 years, going from 2016 to 2036. If you were to extrapolate that line, that's what, under the current, some way of trying to figure out how many more are we going to have, that would be what it would look like. On the other hand, if you read the housing needs assessment, San Juan County anticipates that there will be a max of only 1,000 more vacation rental permits issued in the next 20 years, basically. There are already over 1,000 or even 1,100 vacation rental permits right now, and over half the vacation rental permits in San Juan County are owned by people who do not live in the county. So their estimate shows, in a sense, that the number of permits issued per year will kind of level off, which is up to you to decide. And of course, that right now, because there's no regulations, what happens is not up to us yet. So we have a dilemma. There's no restrictions on the growth of population, means the free market prevails. And we've got a challenge because we have the comprehensive plan vision statement, which is our collectively chosen aspiration. So let's just take two elements of the vision statement just to kind of give you an idea of how many people here have read the vision statement? Okay, it's about a third or quarter, maybe a third. Well, it's there on the San Juan County website. And one of the elements is called the natural environment. The natural environment is central to the ecological health, quality of life, and the economy of the islands. And under the economy section, we support a diverse, resilient, and sustainable economy while respecting the national world. This economy serves the needs of our community and reflects the rural, residential, quiet, agricultural, marine, and isolated nature of the islands. Our economy comprises a wide spectrum of stable year-round activities that provide living or family wages, allow islanders to live, work, and thrive locally. We support and encourage traditional industries such as forestry, agriculture, aquaculture, construction, fishing, and tourism without jeopardizing the natural environment. Well, right now, those things are not being defended by anything, so we need some change agents. And who are the potential change agents? Well, there are three components to the county population. There's locals, there's part-time property owners, and there's visitors. Only one of these votes. And when I talk about voting, I don't mean once every 2 years or 4 years, but if we're really going to have any impact on the future that we say we want, we have to vote every day. And I don't mean you're going to a ballot box, but you talk to your neighbors, or you write a letter to the editor, or you do some research, or you testify before the county council, or you say something to the planning commission, but you engage to protect something that you have made a lifetime investment in, which is not only the monetary value, your home and so on, but far more importantly and far less acknowledged, and because we don't have good metric for it, is our non-monetary investment. Why we're here. It's beautiful, it's quiet, it's the kind of, we chose to come here for reasons that where nobody comes here to make money. People come here because they love it. The Growth Management Act, under which the county is updating its comprehensive plan, does not require the county to consider the impact of visitors or part-time property owners. So it's really up to you. And the League of Women Voters is a perfect change agent vehicle. From their website, I just found out that one of their principal points, which you heard earlier from Steve, is to educate and act. The League of Women Voters of the United States encourages informed and active participation in government. It works to increase understanding of major public policy issues. It influences public policy through education and advocacy, like what's happening today. And the mission is to empower voters and to defend democracy. So I'm really saying that's what the stakes are here today. We need change, and you know why. Humans, whether you like my language or not, are an invasive species. It's probably the biggest exhibit for that is the sixth mass extinction event. And I'm not going to go into all the details of, woe and misery, but we all know in our hearts there's something really wrong. Was it Hamlet who said something about Denmark? What was it? The phrase? Something's
rotten.
Yeah. The trend lines are obvious. Physically, emotionally, and spiritually, we recognize that the kingdom within our heads, and as we see in the outside world, is damaged. In the Parsifal story, it was called barren. But what that means is things don't grow, things don't thrive, things are not moving in the right direction. They're stuck. We need to deal with that. People, and as all you know, I mean, I don't know how many people here, I haven't seen a count, but I'll actually ask it now. How many people in this room are carrying a digital device? Yeah. Okay, so even regardless if you were born at a time when the only thing you had maybe was a typewriter, we're now all plugged in. And there's so much information going on in so many different dimensions that people are on overload. The world and your own selves and perhaps your families are under a spell. We don't think of it in those language because that sounds like fairy tales and something that you'd learn in graduate school and of course in mythology, but in fact we are under a spell and it needs to be broken. Our higher self, the Grail King or Queen, if you want to be both gender-free here, is wounded. Will you break the spell? What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to offer a new vision. This image was created by somebody who worked with me a couple of years ago, and while it is conceptual, I think it might capture for all of us and I'd be curious, when we get to the question and answer period, if you feel that this does capture a sense of where we would like to go. The center of this image is an area called the heart of the vision, and it says forever wild. Well, we're not obviously wild like it might be in some wilderness area, but the concept is, what do we want? We want a kind of wildness, and wildness doesn't mean terrifying. It just means an area of living where we aren't conforming, we're not fitting into little boxes and move our little boxes around from one place to another. The guiding principles are sustainability, diversity, resilience, and thriving. So that's kind of what I think many people feel is where we want to go, and to achieve that in the outer ring are the various elements. All of those elements are actually elements of the comprehensive plan. Housing, food, water, energy, land use, and all those kinds of things that help guide and create the abstraction of diversity and sustainability, and all of those are pointed toward a sense of who we are and where we want to be. Now, under the economy, we have one element called tourism. It's not the only element, and I'm not sure exactly how we are all going to be having conversations today, but I'm not here to have some sort of adversarial place. I'm trying to introduce the fact that we don't want the tail wagging the dog. Now, so in this vision, here is a text or verbal way of imagining. Imagine a county whose population of residents and visitors chooses to honor its rural, wild, sustainable, refreshing, slow, nature-centered, non-exploitive, respectful, in perpetuity heritage. Imagine stepping off the ferry into a sacred sanctuary. Imagine that while everything looks the same, humans operate with a mindset of humility, acceptance, compassion, and respect. Imagine that each person, property owner, visitor, resident, family member, supplier, takes off her or his I'm the dominant species here mindset, and metaphorically, spiritually, and behaviorally embraces the perspective that I am a custodian steward for a precious and threatened national international park sanctuary. Psychologically and emotionally, we can move from a cowboy to a farmer. And of course, I'm going to give you some of those details of what is a cowboy's image. And of course, I think for many of us who used to watch television, I don't know if anybody watches television anymore, and the ads are different now, but 30, 40 years ago, there was a Marlboro man. And it was not a Marlboro woman, which is unfortunate. Well, actually, probably a good thing. And the Marlboro man represented independence, and of course, he's smoking a cigarette, which means he can defy death because he's so strong that he's not going to get cancer or even get any kind of lung disease. He's free to roam. He's not bound to any place and not obligated to anything. We go from an expense to an investment, where we see what we're doing as an investment in our future and in the future of other people. We go from short-term view to a long-term view. We go from a nomad to a fixed location. This is all farmer stuff. And psychologically or metaphorically, that's who we are. We have chosen to be farmers here. I don't mean that we're digging up the soil and planting crops. Oh, maybe some people are, but we're doing that metaphorically. This is our home, and we're trying to protect it. So we don't want to go from defile and move on, but to invest and maintain. And you want to go from commodity to community. I'm using the word commencement here and not the word conclusion, because I love the word commencement. It means the end of one thing and the beginning of something else. And that's exactly the focus point that we are here at today. We need to honor the vision statement's aspirations. We want to focus on refreshment, not intensity. Obviously, I don't know what the experience here is on San Juan Island, but on Orcas in the summer, it's feeding time at the zoo. It's crazy. I used to talk to one politician who lived on Orcas, and I asked him, well, what do you think about, this was last year, what do you think about the traffic and all the things that are happening in East Sound in the summer? And he said, I don't go to East Sound between May and October. And if any of you did that, I don't know, again, I don't know, but here, there's no place to park, literally. You just drive around, and maybe you just say, well, park illegally or something like that. And I don't want to go into a whole bunch of negative things, but there is clearly a strong feeling that we have exceeded what you might call a physical and a community and an emotional carrying capacity. And given the fact that there's no limits on this, there's no reason to imagine that isn't going to be going forward. And this is, perhaps in the question and answer period, this is for anybody who's living here who even has vacation rental, and I have a vacation rental, and I've been running it for 27 years, and all the posters on the inside, the artwork, are San Juan Preservation Trust posters. And I use the this vehicle that got a captive audience to educate them about the impact of them and others. But at the same time, I'm also extremely aware of the fact that we can't create a golden, and we don't want to create a golden ghetto where we're just here and nobody else can come. We have to share the space, but the question is, how do you share it in a way that is sustainable? And it's pretty clear that we have no guidelines on, we don't even know how to define sustainable. And I want to be, bring to your attention the fact that nothing in San Juan County is sustainable. 99% of our fuel, of our food, our money, all the things that keep us running come from what probably some people here call America. And so we have to figure out a way, and part of why I'm proposing this mental shift of reframing who we are, not just as like individuals who are sitting here and hoping that somebody else will come in like the Parzival and save us by breaking the spell. But we have to do that.
Joe, about 10 minutes. About 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, I've got about 30 seconds.
No, okay.
We want to reframe, I think, the idea of the county. I'm not saying we would want it to be literally a national park, but conceptually a national park where everyone is a steward. You're a steward of your own land and you're a steward of the community, the thing that really make being here as a community meaningful. Parzival's failure symbolizes our failure to break the spell, heal our inner Grail King, and thus heal the kingdom of San Juan County. You can break the spell if you heed the call. Let wisdom and humility be your guides. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
We will have a question and answer period, fairly lengthy, I'm guessing, based on all the people that are here, and probably a lot of questions, but right now, I'd like to ask Barbara Mart to come up. Barbara Mart is the Communications Manager and Stewardship Manager for the San Juan Islands Visitor Bureau. As Stewardship Manager, Barbara works to educate visitors and media on the island's fragile ecosystems, while also teaching them proper leave no trace behavior in the marine and terrestrial environments. Barbara's called the island's home port for 41 years, and during this period she has traveled long distances by sailboat to the Pacific's most remote islands, teaching and writing about sail. Please welcome Barbara.
Okay, we're going to get my presentation teed up here. On a borrowed computer. Okay, there we go. Well, I love what Joe said. I'm a big Joe Campbell fan. I love that vision. We have this same...
Okay, that's better. Okay. Thank you, Joe. I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan of the hero's journey. We have this saying up at the Visitors Bureau: tourism is like fire. Harnessed, it can cook your food. Out of control, it can burn your house down. So we are not, well, I am not here to advocate for managed, God, sorry, I'm nervous. I'd like to make it clear that I'm here to advocate for managed visitation to the islands, not the uncontrolled growth of tourism. And all of the issues that Joe brought up so beautifully, we've been aware of at the Visitors Bureau for many years. And I want to tell you what we're doing to address them. So first of all, let me tell you our mission to enhance the economic prosperity of San Juan County by promoting the San Juan Islands as a preferred year-round travel destination
while respecting and sustaining the island's unique and diverse ecosystems, environments, lifestyles, and cultures. A lot of people don't know what we do at the Visitors Bureau, so one of my goals for last year and this year was to educate people so they understand what we do and support and respect our mission. And how we're doing that this year is we're using local media, such as the Journal. We're writing articles, we're putting in press releases to talk about what the Visitors Bureau does. We participate on many boards. So I was on the Monument Advisory Committee. I was selected by the Secretary of the Interior to be on that committee. I was on the committee for 3 years. I was on the Stewardship Network of the San Juans. I have been a volunteer at our National Historical Park. So I'm very well aware of all of the issues that Joe brought up. Another thing that we do is we write letters in support of environmental causes. So as Stephanie Buffum knows, often they will contact all of us who are supporters of Friends of the San Juans, and they'll ask us to write letters. And so as wearing my stewardship hat at the Visitors Bureau, I will write letters in support of safe shippers, in support of increased monitoring of shipping and rescue tugs in our waters. So we're very active with our community in that way. We use our website to promote responsible travel. So we recently hired a young man to write a blog about responsibly photographing the foxes. We have also just put up a page on our website about how tourism works for San Juan County to help educate you. We were the first destination marketing organization in all of Washington State to have a stewardship manager. And now I'd say most other destination marketing organizations have them. So from the very beginning, we have been concerned about having our visitors behave properly when they come to the island, conveying to them that this is a special place and we want to keep it that way. So in 2004, we had a Leave Only Footprints campaign that talked about things like recycling, conserving water, respecting wildlife, being quiet, avoiding eelgrass, leaving your car at home, and how to be whale-wise, also how to stay on trails. And that has now, we don't do a big printed guide anymore. We just have a very small map that I can pass some of these around if you'd like to see. That saves on paper. We use our website instead to educate people. But I brought along these San Juan Island Stewardship Guides. We helped the county produce these. We furnished them with content. We furnished them with photographs. And we help distribute them to every lodging property that would like one. So these are in the rooms telling people how to behave as visitors. We were instrumental in getting Leave No Trace here. We're the first county in the nation to become a voluntary Leave No Trace area. And these 7 principles are found on our map guides. They're found on our website. And a little bit about how we are funded. So we have a contract with San Juan County. We receive lodging tax. We have a grant from the town of Friday Harbor, which also is funded by lodging tax, and we have membership dues. So 4% is added to every room charge. This is on top of retail sales tax for a variety of things. We use it at the Visitors Bureau for promotion of tourism and stewardship, but it also supports tourism facilities, events and festivals that attract tourists, and educational signage. This is a lot of money, and so a lot of people want the money, and I don't blame them, but the money is restricted by an RCW. Which really says you have to use it for things that are related to tourism. Although people do play fast and loose with this money. So some of the things that this money has supported recently for 2020, there are going to be 31 recipients of approximately $1 million. So Trails, through San Juan County, Trails is going to get approximately $85,000. Our historical and art museums receive money for overhead. Parks and Fairgrounds receives about $300,000. Our performing arts centers, lit festivals, film festivals, building of parking areas and sidewalks, and then the visitors and chambers receive this money as well. So our team, Deborah Hopkins is our executive director. I'm the communications and stewardship manager. And then Amy Nestler helps me, and she's taken on a lot of the stewardship activities. So Amy has a degree in sustainable tourism. She's the head of the Stewardship Network. She's on the Leave No Trace Committee. So she's super involved. So the Stewardship Network is about 25 local stewardship organizations. So Long Live the Kings and the Whale Museum, Wolf Hollow, the Land Bank, the Preservation Trust, all of these groups, the Friends of the San Juans, are all part of the Stewardship Network. And because Amy is the chair this year, we really do have our finger on the pulse of what's happening out there. Erin, who's here, is our marketing and content outreach coordinator, and then we have a new member, Kimberly, who does visitor services. So we focus on shoulder and quiet season promotion because this is what we've been asked to do. This is what surveys want us to do. What it does is supports more year-round jobs, it spreads out the tourist load, and it keeps restaurants, shops, museums, and performing arts centers more viable year-round for our enjoyment. So when I moved here, there was no whale museum. There were no performing arts centers on any of the islands. The Limekiln Lighthouse was scheduled to be developed, that area around there, 220 parcels. There was a handful of mediocre restaurants in all of the islands. So although I didn't move here for any of those reasons, because they weren't here when I moved here, I have to say that I do enjoy some of the cultural vibrancy that we now have here in the island, the film festivals, the lit festival, etc. So as part of our promotion of quiet season, we promote something called Save the San Juans. We invite people to come here and do the farm tours, come to the farmers markets. We're really conscious at the Visitors Bureau at who we want to attract. We don't want to attract luxury tourists. We don't want to attract people who are going to come here and make a lot of noise and party, and that's just not who we are. So we're very conscious. Now, of course, we can't control everything, but we try our best to promote what we have here, which is our beautiful environment and some of our great restaurants. So while you're all shopping on the mainland at Christmas, we're trying to bring people here to support our merchants. So we send out a press release that says, shop small, not mall. You know, leave the cookie cutter chain stores on the mainland and come here and have a real experience. In the spring, we designate April as Voluntourism Month. We work with our stewardship organizations, try and get people here for the Great Island Cleanup. We work with the Friends of the San Juans on that. May is History Lives Here Month. Again, we're trying to attract the kind of respectful tourist that we all want to come. We have a series called Island Voices where we let islanders talk about what they love here. And who better to convey island values than people who live here? So we have a chef, we have a farmer, we have a kayak operator, a kayak guide, sorry. What else do we have? Yeah, the historian. We're going to show you the two that we made this year. One is on wellness, and that was filmed on Orcas Island. And then the one we're going to show you is on heritage tourism. So as a lot of you probably know, heritage tourism is a big deal. People are researching their roots. They want to go to the home country. They want to go to Germany or Ireland and find out who their relatives are. Well, there are a lot of people whose relatives were on San Juan Island. And so they come here to research their relatives, and they use our historical museums to do that.
The history of the San Juan Islands is really fascinating. Not only are we
Robin Jacobson.
We're real islands. There are no bridges.
The Coast Salish settled out here. It was a very peaceful environment, a lot of interaction with people from all over the world. I think people coming here today immediately sense the environment, the peace, and I think they do feel some of the history.
People coming today can see a lot of the remnants of the past. You can really turn back time and immerse yourself. The Lime Works, for instance, is an old company town. The lime quarries can still be visited.
The posts that are here, these are the house posts. This is the tradition of the Salish. It is significant here because house posts are meant to be welcoming to others, and here is the port of entry at Ready Harbor. This signifies the Salish foundation for this community.
Wherever you're going in the islands, you can look at the buildings that were built in the 1880s and the 1890s around the turn of the century. And unlike many other places which no longer have those buildings, we still have them in the San Juan Islands. And in many cases, they are still serving the same purpose for which they were built.
There's walking tours that will give you some of the history. There's the Saturday market, bringing back that spirit of the bounty of the San Juans that we all want to share with everyone.
The best way to enjoy and to appreciate the islands is to help protect this area and preserve it for future generations.
Okay, and then we have a stewardship video I'll show you a little bit later. So people are confused about what we do as opposed to what chambers do. So chambers are focused on business to business. They aren't necessarily visitor-oriented businesses. Chambers have visitor centers downtown. They help visitors once they arrive. They help folks who wish to relocate to the islands. They put on events which attract tourists, such as 4th of July fireworks on San Juan Island and the Islands Lights Festival at Christmas. The Visitors Bureau website is the main portal for island information. So when you Google the San Juan Islands, often our website will come up first. We work behind the scenes promoting events for the chambers or for anyone, any kind of event that you have. You don't have to be a member. Let us know if you think it's something that a visitor would enjoy, and we'll help you promote it. That's really what we're here for. Our offices are in the Technology Center, and our members focus on visitors such as lodgings, restaurants, and activities such as kayaking and whale watching. So we subscribe to Destination Next, which is a service that does future studies, and of 521 destination marketing organizations, or DMOs, from 55 countries, the two priorities for all DMOs is destination stewardship, taking care of their destinations, and community alignment, building public support around a shared vision for the destination by residents, governments, and businesses. So we, for the last 5 years, have wanted to have a tourism master plan. We're out there, we've realized what the issues are. I mean, I have taken writers out to Limekiln Lighthouse and gone, oh my God, when did it get like this? we realized we need to do something. We need to start managing so that the place we love stays or goes backwards a little bit to the way we remember it. So the 4 pillars are the environment. So we want to lead our tourism businesses in a way that they would be more sustainable, resident quality of life, protect and enhance our quality of life by mitigation of tourists, quality of the economy. We want to promote more than just tourism, but a year-round economy that's not built on extraction. People like to think of the good old days here. Well, if you came here around the turn of the century, this island was essentially logged because of the lime kilns. So fishing, logging, farming, and the farming that was done here, a lot of it was unsustainable. Those are all extractive industries. So we want something that is much more sustainable. And the visitor experience. We don't want to promote a place that's quiet and lovely and have them come here and experience a zoo. So we've been pushing for that for 5 years because the county was so involved with the comprehensive plan, it kept getting kicked down the road. Finally, the Visitors Bureau applied for lodging tax to get that plan underway, and we received it. We're not going to run the process, though. It's going to be run through the county. So good visitor management matches visitors with opportunities, keeps the impacts at acceptable levels, creates an infrastructure, and I'm not even sure I agree with this, that handles peaks, because I feel like if we, pave Paradise, because one of the biggest complaints people have is there's not enough parking, but when you pave Paradise and create more parking, then you open the door for more people. So don't encourage, invite more than you can handle. That's a really difficult one, but something that hopefully our tourism master plan will address. While we were waiting for the county to approve tourism master plan, our terrestrial managers took the bull by the horns and applied for lodging tax. And they've done some really great visitor assessment surveys. The first one came out in 2018. They surveyed visitors and locals on public lands, and they surveyed people in ferry lines departing the islands. You can find the results on
Vacation rental permit is something that the county issues that, in a sense, authorizes anyone who wants to have a short-term rental facility. That's their authorization, and they have to meet certain standards. However, that being said, and I don't object to the standards, there's no limitation on the number of issuance of these permits.
Okay.
And that, just a comment, this is a real problem throughout the world. All of the VRBOs and Airbnbs in cities like Paris and Barcelona, and they just have cropped up, in the last probably 5 years, and municipalities and counties are scrambling to figure out what to do about it.
Yes, ma'am. And then,
Barbara, I was wondering if any of those videos or any of the promotional materials you talked about are distributed and shown on the ferries themselves as people are coming over.
No, not our videos, but there are stewardship videos that other people have produced that I've seen on the ferries.
So your thought is most people would see them on your website?
Yes, or if we did an ad that linked to them. So most of them are being seen on our website. And the views of a lot of them aren't that great. But Walker, the little guy who was talking about the wildlife, through the roof on YouTube.
in the back.
I was interested in Joe Simon's numbers that 50% of the vacation rental permits are outside the county property owners, which is exactly consistent with the number of homes that are owned by people outside the county. Now, some of them are buying homes in advance so they can retire here. The first Airbnb I stayed at, the people who opened it, she was an assistant prosecutor, he was a musician, music teacher. It was for income to pay their taxes. And for those of us who've gotten our tax bills, the average rate valuation has increased 20% in the county. And if the mill rate isn't lowered, it's going to create more of a hardship for people who have homes, who are on fixed retirement income, or who are not well paid. A lot of salaries around here are $10 to $12 an hour with no benefits. So if we want home ownership, which has been a large part of League's mandate over the years, in terms of
Excuse me,
affordable housing.
do you have a question?
I do.
Great.
How can we keep it as simple as possible so that we can regulate it and enforce it, as well as for people who are maybe not thinking of it as a business, but want to augment income so that they can keep owning homes here in the San Juans and share their local knowledge?
So the they you're speaking of is VRBOs?
People who want VRBOs, residents who live here or who live outside the county. And what?
Do you understand that?
I'll take a crack at that.
Okay, good.
Everything's, of course, up to you. There are some ideas about trying to make a distinction between somebody who lives in the county and who needs extra income because of taxes and a bunch of other things, versus somebody, and there's a large percentage of them, and it's growing, who doesn't live in the county, has no intention of living in the county, is actually building houses in the county strictly to flip to Airbnb, or other people who want to have a second home in the county but don't want to, I mean, you know, maybe can't fully afford it, or just think, hey, if I flip it to Airbnb, I can get my 2 weeks in the summer for myself, and then I can have somebody else, essentially visitors, pay for my mortgage. Now, personally, I think if you can afford a second home, I don't know if you need the extra income, but that's my personal view. But one of the things that most people do not know about, something that the Friends of the San Juans did 15 years ago, was a report called the Cost of Community Services Study. The county does not even show this document on their website. The only place you'll find it is on my website, along with the so-called Nantucket study, which was done by the county in the year 2000, and jumping a little around, but I really do have a point here, in which the county planning department asked a consultant, what about San Juan County compared to Aspen, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and Block Island? And they expected the consultant to come back and say, hey, you guys are nothing like them, party on. This was 20 years ago. In fact, the consultants came back and you are exactly like those guys, you're just 20 years behind. And had all these recommendations, none of which are followed, and that report doesn't exist anywhere except on my website. Now, the only reason I even created that website is an archive of all the kind of material that basically echoes and captures the work that has been done by a number of people to try to avoid this place becoming where we all end up being like captives to a free market system that basically wants to exploit this. It's privatizing a public asset, and we don't have, so the Cost of Community Services study basically shows that for every dollar of revenue that you get from a new construction, a residential construction, it costs the county $1.32 to service it for roads and schools and EMS and all that other stuff. So where does that 32 cents come from? It comes from two places. One, your taxes go up, and two, the services by the government go down. So every time there's a new house here, well, then you ask yourself, who's buying new houses? Well, only, as you all must surely know, only wealthy people are the ones who've been moving here in the last 15, 20 years, because the cost of land is so high. So basically, we are subsidizing wealthy people who don't need the subsidy to come here and increase our tax base. The bottom line, though, is that going forward, it's going to cost us. If we don't control this population growth, which is not really local population growth, it's part-time property owners and visitors, we're going to be paying for their infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, if we want to control it, we might have to do something that's not very well known and potentially very controversial, like purchase and retire development rights and do some other kinds of things. So your costs are going to go up in either case, but there's a major distinction. In one case, you pay for what you don't want. In the other case, you pay for what you do want. And so it's your choice.
Barbara, do you want to make any comments?
I think
That isn't turned on.
It's on.
it's on. I think we all want to preserve ways for ourselves to be able to live here, which for a lot of people is renting out a cabin or VRBO or Airbnb. But we don't want people from other places to be able to do that, and that's understandable. But to legislate for that can be very difficult. So it's a really complex issue, and I think the simplest way to deal with it is to limit the number that will allow, new ones will allow every year. And then remember that a bunch of them are dropping off all the time too. So when the county made basically people pay a fine if they didn't have a permit, we saw a lot of folks drop off the radar and not want to pay the $2,300 for a permit. Now, the way it is now, you only pay that once and you don't have to pay it the next year. A way to discourage people would be to have a permit fee every year.
Okay, great. Yes, ma'am.
Why was there no mention in the Visitors Bureau presentation about the southern residents that are facing imminent extinction and what can be done to save them?
That's a good question. I was there the other night and I heard the different sides of the argument regarding killer whales, the vessel regulations. The Visitors Bureau has promoted limited entry for whale watching vessels. And I think that is a simple way to limit the number of boats, the way that our whale watchers, and I know them, and they feel like they're being crucified right now as the bad guys, and they're not. They have proposed regulations to go 7 knots around the whales, which means it's very quiet for the whales. And they've proposed regulations that I think are good. And I think that our whale watch operators, the ones who are responsible, and most of them are, do care about the whales, and they do care about regulations that will actually make a difference.
Great, thanks. Other questions? Here and then there. Yeah.
How likely, this is for both of you, how likely is it that there will ever be limitations on permits for VRBOs and permits for building residential in general?
Well, I think after all of the folks, I was at the presentation at the county council where most of the folks were from Orcas and they talked about a moratorium. I think some members of the council, and I know some of them pretty well, would be willing, to put a limit on VRBOs. In terms of limiting people to come and build houses, I mean, we have so many buildable lots now that, as Joe said, you'd have to buy back development rights, or you'd have to change zoning. So the way the zoning is now, it really wants to concentrate people in the towns, in the urban areas, and keep the other areas rural. But there would have to be a basic change to that.
Great question. this is why you guys need to vote in all the ways that I was trying to suggest that you need to vote. This is a democracy, and probably one of the data points that most people don't know about is that the density map for San Juan County was originally created in 1979 by people who didn't know what they were doing, and the county didn't really want to participate. It was one of the first time, it was the first comprehensive plan that the county had ever had. It was obviously controversial because at that time, this was one of the most conservative, politically conservative counties in the state. And by the 90s, as many of you, if you've been here long enough, know that in a 2-year period, the county switched, the voters clearly made it clear that they were no interested in conservative points of view, but much more progressive points of view when they elected Rhea and then 2 years later, Darcy. Now, there are some problems that happened as a result of that, but nevertheless, the voters had spoken, but the council didn't deliver. And that's basically been the story of county council relationships for the almost 50 years I've been here. The voters want to say one thing, council doesn't do another. So the 79 density map, if you look at it today, there are right now 17,000 parcels, I'm going to give you rough numbers, 17,000 parcels in San Juan County. About 9,000 of those parcels in rural areas, we're not talking about activity centers, are non-conforming, which means they're smaller than the density zone that they're in. A lot of them are undeveloped. So then there's a question of, should somebody who has a half-acre parcel in a 5-acre zone, should they be allowed to build, 20,000 square foot house? Should there be any relationship between the size of the parcel compared to the density zone and the size of the house? These are all kinds of things, and what happened on Orcas when we were talking about the vacation rental issue was that a group of us got together starting in May to say, both Deer Harbor and East Sound had passed moratorium requests, but of course those Orcas is completely doesn't have a legal jurisdiction. And so the county would have to approve, and the county did not approve it or even discuss it. So that led us to creating these community conversations, because we're not trying to impose something, we're just trying to find a vehicle, kind of like what's happening here, for a conversation to happen. Now, unfortunately, in this particular structure, it's somewhat question and answer, as opposed to maybe more opportunity for you as a group to talk among yourselves. But the point is, we want to get the conversation going. And there's no reason why there can't be limits on the number of vacation rental permits issued. There's no reason why there can't be limits on the number of building permits issued. For example, San Juan County is estimated for this comp plan update of a population of about 3,000 people, that is to say, locals, 3,000 people who are going to move here and live here. They estimate that will occur between now and 2036. That's not counting visitors and visitor accommodations. It's not counting part-time property owners and their accommodations that they might have.
So what percentage increase is that?
The percentage increase, if I remember, is around 2%, 1.5, 2%. I can look it up. But the point is, if you take 3,000 people and there's 2 people per house, that's 1,500 houses in the next 20 years. 1,500 houses divided by 20 would be 75 houses a year if you were going to spread it out, right? Let's just, I don't want to say anything negative about Shaw, but let's just pretend that we're only looking at 3 main development islands, Lopez, Orcas, and San Juan Island. That would mean 25 houses per year for each of those islands. Well, the Growth Management Act also more or less mandates that half development should occur in activity centers. So if you were to say, okay, we get 25 for San Juan Island for 2020, 25 building permits that we, if we were going to meet the population projection, remember that's a projection. since this is a free market, it could be 2 or 3 times that. There's no requirement. But if San Juan County said we're going to make a requirement, that we're only going to issue the number of permits that are based upon our estimated growth of population, that way you could control the costs of infrastructure and all kinds of things. Because you would know in advance there's not going to be any more than so many. In any case, that would mean 13 structures or building permits could be issued for what's called the activity centers of San Juan Island, and 12 could be issued for the rural areas of San Juan Island. And the same would be true for Lopez and Orcas.
Great.
So that you could control.
I got another question coming up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are ways to achieve what you want, but they've never been discussed and they've never been obviously
How do we get
implemented.
this going?
Excuse me. I have another question back here in the back. I'll be happy to come to you.
This is a little bit of an observation and opportunity. The county on November 4th published its revised draft land capacity analysis, and comments are due on December 2nd. So this is a good moment for everybody to go on to the San Juan Islander and link to the county website and look at this thing. And in terms of what Joe is saying, the activity center estimation up to the year 36 has been revised downward in this draft plan from 180 to 83, whereas the countywide rural areas estimate has been changed from 2,400 to 2,300 and something. Now that's still a hell of a lot of units, but I really think that everybody should take the responsibility, as I'm sure Joe would agree, to go read this thing and comment by the 2nd of December. Thanks.
And just as a data point, if you try to do that, unless you get a doctorate in county or city planning and possibly a degree in land use law, you are not going to understand it at all. I have read the LCA 4 times. I got a PhD from the University of Washington in urban geography with a 3.9 GPA, and I don't get it. So, and I've been studying population issues for 25 years. I could go into that, but at the time that we challenged the comp plan in 1999, the build-up population, which was never described in the comprehensive plan, but I figured out using county data, and I'm making this up, that the build-up population for a county that began getting census data in 1870, and between 1870 and 1970, the population of the county barely changed. It was less than 4,000 people for the entire county. We became the fastest growing county in the state of Washington. And when I ran the numbers of what the build-up population was, at the time it was around, the current population was around 12 to 13,000. The build-up population was 175,000 people for San Juan County, based upon that 1979 density map that no one has ever discussed since. And we, as members of the committee to rewrite the comprehensive plan, were prohibited from discussing density. And nobody has discussed density since then. So what is my current estimate for the build-up population, not counting visitors, is around 80,000 people. Now, San Juan, town of Friday Harbor alone, based upon the density map they have, has the potential for over 80,000 people. Now, what they're going to do about it, I don't know, but that's legally on the books. And when you think about who's moving here, people don't move here to go to Friday Harbor or East Sound or Lopez Village. They want to move in the country. So the real issue then is what is happening to rural character. I don't have time to keep foaming at the mouth about this, but I do have a lot of information about what's really going on the ground.
Barbara had a comment, I believe.
Yeah. One comment on why the county council didn't approve for the moratorium for Deer Harbor and East Sound was that they didn't want that development to move out into the county, because those are the urban growth areas. And then on a more positive note, I remember, the red flag going up after the build-out numbers were given in 1979. And our population is 17,500. And I think we all, I've lived here since 1978, and I have seen, you know, the population grow, but I've also seen the land bank and the preservation trust buy up big parcels of beautiful property and preserve them. So what I'd like to say to all of you is support the land bank, support the preservation trust, support the Friends of the San Juans. They know these really sensitive parcels that we really need to preserve for ourselves, for visitors, for our children. And I think compared to other places, San Juan County has done a pretty phenomenal job in a lot of ways. And if you look at this list of 40 things that we've done here, including banning jet skis, no place else has been able to do that. Styrofoam containers, we have more plug-in electric vehicles than any other per capita place in the Western Hemisphere. And the list goes on, and we had to stop at 40 because we were promoting the 40th anniversary of the Friends and the Whale Museum and the Preservation Trust. So I just want to say, get involved, but don't get discouraged.
Okay, is that a question?
No, I just wanted to hear what he had to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Steve. We're way off track here. Thank you both very much for coming in and talking about this. We're talking about tourism. And the thing that neither of you has mentioned is that, at least in my point of view, tourism here is a very fragile thing. It's a huge part of our economic sector, but it's a very fragile thing. If you paid any attention to what's going on nationally or regionally with economics, and the house of cards starting to come apart. And our environment shows it. The whales, the salmon show that we're way down the road toward a bad place. And so I would like to hear both of you respond to, do you think tourism coming out here on ferries is a fragile thing? And how are we going to be prepared if we continue to focus on bringing all the tourists we can here, when in fact that probably is going to fall apart at some point on its own?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The next economic downturn is going to really hit the tourism industry. I mean, it did in 2007 and 2008. It is really fragile. And so that's, in the big picture, that's something to keep in mind for the island economy. You know, as soon as there's a big economic downturn, there's going to be a big sector of this community wanting the Visitors Bureau to step up their promotion. So it's this balance of, you know, staying on people's radars but not overdoing it so that we don't want to live here anymore. I think there are too many people in the world, that's the bottom line. But you bring up a good point about it is very fragile. And right now we have a pretty booming economy worldwide, but everybody's waiting for the next recession to happen pretty soon. And tourism buildup, it's just exploded everywhere. Thailand, South America, I mean, you name it. And everybody is dealing with over-tourism.
I'm not sure I really know how to answer that. That, from my point of view, having been in the hospitality industry for 27 years, I, as I said earlier, don't want to cut off tourists. I want to share this, because so many people are on overload in urban areas. Of course, as Barbara pointed out in her slide, tourists come here and they think this place is paradise. And those of us who've been here a while say, what's happening? There's too many people here. But we are the voters, and we can create an environment that is supportive for long-term use. And tourism just happens to be I'm going to say the cheapest, fastest, simplest way of basically privatizing a public asset. Public asset is how beautiful it is here. And if you've got an extra room in your house, or you've got a house across the street, or even down the way, you can say, gee, I could flip that, I could get some short-term rental. The fact that you're also cutting out long-term rentals for people. I mean, there's absolutely no place on Orca to rent. I actually turned my house into a home for 2 people in transition. It's a big house, you know. But the point is that they'd be on the street or they wouldn't even be in the county. One of them is a full-time worker in East Sound, and without a place to live, that business would suffer. And I talked to the owner of the business who thanked me for being able to make a room in my house available so that the businesses could keep going. Yes, I think tourism is fragile, and I think we as a community should be developing economic development concepts that don't rely on tourism, that rely on year-round stuff. And of course, the next easiest thing conceptually is intellectual property workers. You know, somebody got a computer at home that can work for Google or Microsoft or somebody like that. I'm not saying that's the best, because big tech companies have their own problems. So, you know, we're not going to go back to agriculture. So we have some conversations that need to happen.
Okay, yes. Question in the back?
Yeah, Lauren Johnson here. Can we be selective and invite the tourists without their cars?
On San,
Well, actually, I think that is a plus and a minus going forward 5 years from now. I am guessing that there will be a tremendous number of autonomous vehicles, so tourists could just walk on the ferry. You know, the Yakima has a carrying capacity of passengers of 3,000 people. The people could walk on the ferry, walk off the ferry with their little duffel bag, and a car will meet them, take them wherever they want. And then if they want to go out to breakfast or dinner, they just pull this out of their pocket and then call up a vehicle that shows up in 5 or 10 minutes and takes them where they're going. And so that would technically reduce a whole lot of traffic on the road.
Right. How about bicycles? How about bringing the eco-tourists to something close, like Beaverton Valley, putting beavers and salmon in Beaverton Valley, restoring it to its original so that you don't have to go all over the island. You can walk there and back.
Well, one of the problems with Orcas, which is different from Lopez and San Juan Islands, it's pretty hilly. And I actually had a guest at my place several months ago who was committed to riding her bike. She was an international bike riding, groupie. And I suggested, I'm not sure you want to do this, and she said, I'm going to do it. Well, when she got to my place, which is basically on the far east of Orcas Island, so it's about as far as you could ride a bike, she was completely wasted. And in fact, I said, look, if you want, I'll put your bike in the pickup truck and I'll drive you to the ferry. But her attitude was, no, I came here to ride my bike, so I'm going to ride it back. But she actually left a day early to find a place in East Sound so her last leg wouldn't kill her. You know, you have to get up at 2 in the morning just to get to the ferry dock.
Barbara, did you want to say
yeah,
something?
sure. So in those tourism studies, I alluded to one of the top priorities for locals is to have bike trails or bike separation zones or larger shoulders for biking. On San Juan Island, it's really not a problem for people to leave their cars on the mainland because, well, in the summer anyway. We have San Juan Transit, we have that Jolly Trolley, we have car and moped rentals here. But Lopez has nothing. They don't even have a taxi. So you have to hitchhike, or they'll drop bikes at the ferry landing, which is really nice. And a lot of our bike rental companies now have electric bikes, which is great.
Is there enough water available for new residences in the county?
Wow, is there enough water available?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And what happens, on the waterfront is people build these big houses with 2 or 3 shower nozzles, and the first time their family comes, they run the well dry. And then they're like, oh, well, we'll just do desal. Well, I was on the Marine Resources Committee for a long time, And desal is a really bad idea for the environment in
Yeah.
enclosed bays. So I'm not a scientist and I don't have the data, but I believe that, if we were built out, I think we'd run out of water. Without doing desal.
Bad? Well, how is that bad?
Desalinization?
Yeah, what does it do that's bad?
Well, it concentrates, it takes salt water and makes fresh water and then concentrates all the salt and spits it back out.
Into the ocean, yeah.
Okay.
And if you're in an enclosed bay, it makes it too salty
Of
for
course,
things to
right.
survive.
Oh, wow.
In response to the water issue, and my understanding is that every well on Lopez Island has saltwater intrusion. Now, the ones in the center of the island may not have, not going to like drinking out of the ocean, but it's measurable. And near the edges, it's much more of a significant problem. Now, on Orcas, we don't have, and actually countywide, there is no requirement that anybody who's on a well has to meter it. The water laws in Washington State go back a long way, and they were basically oriented around somebody who was self-sufficient, that was farming and dominated by people east of the Cascades. So you can have a permit for a well that can draw technically up to 5,000 gallons a day without any kind of metering or any kind of anything. So basically no one who's in the rural areas has a meter on their well. In East Sound, because we have East Sound Water District, there are meters on all the water users, and the meters can be read electronically every minute, I think, now. So the head of the East Sound Water District did a study of all those, of the residences in East Sound that are single-family, locally owned people, and other ones which are vacation rentals. And the results of that study was that the vacation rental homes used 89% more water than the local homes. Now, when are they using that water? They're using it in the summer when the wells and the water aquifers are even lower. I got a call out of the blue a few weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago today, from a guy on Orcas who happens to be an inspector for septic systems. He installs them and cleans them and inspects them and so on. And as you probably all know, those of you who are on a septic system, if it's pumped, it needs to be inspected every year. If it's gravity, it needs to be inspected every 3 years. Well, this guy was apoplectic about the number of septic fields that were failing because they had too much water going through them. And the too much water was because of too many people using water. And if you are, in a sense, an absentee owner of a vacation rental, you don't really care what the user is. And as we all know, visitors who come here have urban values. And one of those values is, hey, there's always water and there's always sewer. I don't even think about those things. And so they don't have a mentality that here you really have to pay attention, especially in months like August and September. So one of the things that, again, you as voters and as citizens can do is insist that all wells in San Juan County have a meter on them and that are read on a regular basis, not once a year, not once a quarter, but I would say every day. So that you could, because if you average stuff out over a quarter or over a 6 month period, you miss the data that might be really critical to figure out what the aquifers are. Because nobody has an aquifer map of any of the areas in San Juan County. So yeah, I think once, as Barbara pointed out, if people have a wealthy, they're used to using a lot of water, and maybe everybody around them, suddenly those guys' wells go dry. And that's again a privatization of a public asset that I don't think is something we should allow without a conversation.
Any other questions, yes, ma'am?
Well, first to just add, we looked into putting a meter on our well just out of interest. And it was gonna be over $1,000. So when when you make that requirement, you have to think about it. But even more to the point is, do you see water supply as a vehicle for restricting the kind of growth that you're concerned about?
Well, this is a really tricky area. I think everybody's looking for some outside force to solve the problem. You know, oh, it's a carrying capacity issue. We don't have enough water. Or, I don't know, it certainly wouldn't be electricity, certainly wouldn't be propane or fuel oil. But they're trying to find something out there. But the reality is that's really avoiding the issue. The issue is we are a community, we decide our future, and we have to figure out how we're going to solve it. We can't just say, oh, there's not enough water, because even though Barbara's pointed out that desal is harmful, there's no rules that you say you can't have it. And so, and since people who come here, as I pointed out, have money, they're just say, oh, we need more water, desal, or something else. Years ago they were talking about towing in icebergs. Another thing would be, people have always for years talked about the fear of a bridge. Well, what about a water line, a water pipe that came from Bellingham? There's always going to be some technological solution that will get around, and people, bless them, a lot of people game the system. And so if you're willing to game the system, which a lot of people are, it wrecks it for everybody else.
It's true.
Did you want to say anything, Bob?
I lived on a 31-foot sailboat crossing the ocean for 3 weeks, and we had a gallon of water a day. So the Visitors Bureau has always promoted people conserve water when they come here. Not that everybody does it, but you can do it, and you can do it yourselves because it's really easy to leave the tap running when you're brushing your teeth or doing the dishes or anything like that.
Saw a hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Back to vacation rentals in your neighborhood. What can we as homeowners do? I don't want to step on other homeowners' toes. Some people need the income from being able to rent. I don't know what my future holds. Maybe I would want to rent my house out on a vacation rental. It's not something I would wish to do, but I don't know what my circumstances would be. And we have several rentals in our neighborhood, which mean that our neighborhood is like totally different. And we don't know who's there in the summer. We see cars go by, but we don't know those people, and it's kind of an enclosed area. How can we encourage people who need to sell or want to sell to not do that? I mean, it's like it's very personal to everybody. So I'm agreeing with you that it has to be up to us as individuals, but I have no idea what do we do? I mean, put signs in their yards?
Could I make a comment?
Yeah.
I think that Joe spelled it out pretty clearly, as did Barbara, and that's, you have to say...
Use the gadget, we can't hear you.
I think Joe spelled it out very clearly, and Barbara did as well, and that's, you have a current number of VRBOs that are permitted, and you'd start deciding how many more you're willing to allow on a yearly basis in terms of permits, and that's how you control it. But in the absence of any formula that says next year we'll have 20 more approved VRBOs on San Juan Island, it's sort of a wild open season, as I understand from what Joe said. So the involvement I believe he is suggesting, and as is Barbara, is get involved, is talk to your county councilman. So on this island, we have one, Mr. Watson, or Borkus, or Jamie Stevens, or I'm blanking on
Rick Hughes.
Rick Hughes, thank you. Talk to them.
Okay.
Also,
Do you want to add anything?
yeah, Our homeowners association does not allow short-term rentals. And so we, as a homeowners association, if somebody broke that rule, we could go after them and sue them. We've never done that for anyone, and we're really reluctant to do it, but it is kind of a last recourse if you live in an association that doesn't allow.
San Juan County's got a problem with this because of the vacation rental permit application does not ask if you are within a homeowners association, and if a homeowners association prohibits, as most of them do, short-term rentals, the county does not enforce that. They don't get involved with private homeowners associations. Now, again, this involves a community conversation. I have picked up from the ethers that most people who are locals, who need the income, who either are willing to share, I mean, I've heard a story of an elderly couple on Orcas who in the summer move out of their house into their garage, and they rent their whole house just so that that's the only way they can afford to live there. And other people are doing something when you are a local person who is sharing either a room in your house, called owner occupied, or maybe a structure on your property, then that's a different thing than if you're an outside investor who's just simply trying to get money. And the homeowners associations, one of the things that I proposed to DCD, so far they have declined to take advantage of my proposal, was that the amount of information that they should ask of any applicant for a vacation rental permit should be increased dramatically, and it would include officially stating that they know what their homeowners association rules are, and so that people could say, well, you're getting one when you know that your permit is invalid in your place. And I know of a guy on Orcas who has 3 other vacation rentals, 1 on one side and 2 on the other side, and often in the summer when a group of people come, they rent all the houses, and then the kids and the people go back and forth. He said even one of them was, he found them riding his propane tank, playing games with it, and he doesn't know any of these people. And so that's another thing, the whole nature of what a neighborhood is has been changed dramatically. So there is some question as to whether these are commercial activities. According to the Washington State Supreme Court, even though it is a commercial activity, it is permitted in a residential area. But then the question is, well, what if you have 3 vacation rentals? Is that really residential, or isn't it really commercial? And should we make a distinction about that?
It's
Thank you. We have to exit this lovely location at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to have to thank Barbara and Joe for their presentation. You do? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Always helpful if you can bring chairs over.